The warehouse exploded with gunfire as Isabella Romano threw herself behind a stack of wooden crates, her heart pounding so violently she could barely hear her own scream. A bullet tore through the air where her head had been a heartbeat earlier, splintering the wood beside her. Across the room, a tall man covered in blood stepped out of the smoke with a pistol in one hand and fire burning in his gray eyes. "No," Isabella cried. "Luca, don't." The tattooed man didn't slow down. "I told you," he growled, firing another shot. "Nobody touches what's mine." Another explosion shook the building. Flames climbed the walls. Armed men rushed toward him from every direction, but Luca Moretti moved like he had survived 100 wars. Tattoos stretched from his neck beneath the collar of his torn black shirt, disappearing over his powerful chest and down both muscular arms. Even through the ripped fabric, the ink covering his body was impossible to miss. A masked man grabbed Isabella from behind, pressing a knife against her throat. "Drop your weapon!" he shouted. Luca froze. For the first time since the shooting started, fear crossed the face of Chicago's most feared mafia boss. "If she dies," Luca said quietly, "none of you leave this building alive." The masked man laughed. "You should have never claimed a waitress." The world seemed to stop. How had a hard-working waitress become the reason the city's deadliest mafia families had gone to war? That answer began only 12 days earlier. If stories packed with romance, danger, and impossible choices are your favorite, don't forget to subscribe before this one steals your heart. 12 days earlier, Isabella Romano had been worrying about something far less dramatic than bullets. She was late for work. "Perfect," she muttered, while hurrying through downtown Chicago with her apron folded over one arm. Of all days, at 32, Isabella had learned to smile through life's disappointments. She was proudly Italian, born to immigrant parents who had filled her childhood with loud family dinners, homemade pasta, and endless love. She was also beautifully plus size, not because she had given up on herself, not because she lacked confidence, simply because that was her body, and she wore every curve with quiet dignity. Customers remembered her warm smile long before they noticed anything else. Working at Bellissimo, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants, wasn't her dream. Her dream was opening a neighborhood cafe where lonely people could always find good food and someone willing to listen. But dreams required money, money she didn't have. That evening, her manager pulled her aside. "Isabella, I need a favor," she sighed. "That usually means extra work. It also means triple pay." Her eyes widened. "I'm listening. We're catering a private charity gala in the old Black Orchid Speakeasy. Only our best staff are going." She frowned. "I've never even heard of that place." "Most people haven't." He lowered his voice. "The guests are influential." She laughed. "So billionaires with expensive opinions? You could say that." Triple pay was impossible to refuse. An hour later, Isabella stood inside the most breathtaking ballroom she had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm golden light across polished marble floors. A live orchestra filled the room with elegant music, while men in custom suits and women wearing diamonds worth more than most houses drifted through the crowd. Everything looked perfect, yet something felt wrong. Too many men watched every entrance. Too many guests whispered instead of laughed. Too many expensive suits hid something darker beneath their polished appearance. She leaned toward another waitress. "Is it just me, or is everyone acting like they're afraid of someone?" The waitress swallowed nervously. "I heard someone important is coming." "Who?" "I don't know." Before Isabella could ask another question, the room fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward the entrance. 5 men entered first, not bodyguards, soldiers. Their expressions never changed as they scanned every corner of the ballroom. Then he walked in. Luca Moretti, 6'4", broad shoulders, tailored black Italian suit, dark hair brushed neatly back, a trimmed beard, eyes so cold they seemed capable of freezing the room. His tattoos crept above the collar of his shirt, disappearing beneath expensive fabric before reappearing around his wrists. The atmosphere changed instantly. People who had ignored senators and CEOs suddenly stood straighter. Several guests lowered their eyes completely. One elderly businessman whispered a prayer. Isabella blinked. "Who is he?" The other waitress looked horrified. "You don't know?" She shook her head. "Keep your voice down. Seriously, who is he?" The waitress leaned close. "They call him the Ghost King." "That's not an answer. It is if you value your life." Before Isabella could ask more questions, the restaurant manager rushed over. "You'll be serving the VIP table." Her stomach dropped. "Me? Smile. I always smile. And don't make mistakes." She grabbed an expensive bottle of vintage red wine and took a deep breath. "You've got this." Step by careful step, she approached Luca's table. The powerful man wasn't speaking. He simply watched the room while everyone else talked around him. His presence alone controlled the atmosphere. As Isabella reached the table, another waiter accidentally backed into her. Everything happened at once. The bottle slipped. Her balance disappeared. Deep crimson wine cascaded over Luca Moretti's custom-made black suit. The orchestra stopped. A wine glass shattered somewhere behind her. Someone whispered, "Dear God." Another voice murmured, "She's finished." Isabella couldn't breathe. "Oh my God." Her hands shook violently. "I'm so sorry." Nobody moved. One of Luca's bodyguards slowly reached beneath his jacket. Another cracked his knuckles. Several guests quietly stepped away from the table. The silence became unbearable. Luca stood. He looked down at the wine soaking his jacket before lifting his eyes to Isabella. She expected shouting. She expected rage. She even expected him to slap her. Instead, he calmly removed his soaked jacket and handed it to one of his men. Then he looked directly into Isabella's frightened brown eyes. "What is your name?" Isabella." "Look at me, Isabella." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I didn't mean." "I know." His answer stunned everyone, including his own guards. Luca studied her face for several silent seconds. Finally, the corner of his mouth lifted into the smallest hint of a smile. "You'll work for me until your debt is repaid." She stared at him. "My debt? The suit. I'll pay for it."
"You can't."
"I can save up." "No." His voice remained calm. "You belong under my protection now." She frowned. "I don't understand." "You will." Without another word, Luca turned and walked away. His bodyguards followed. Within seconds, the ballroom erupted into whispers. What just happened? Why did he spare her? He never spares anyone. Isabella stood frozen. She hadn't been fired. She hadn't been arrested. She hadn't been threatened. But somehow, that felt even more frightening. Across the room, hidden behind a balcony railing, a man lowered the scope of a sniper rifle. His expression twisted with frustration. "The waitress ruined everything," he muttered into an earpiece. A cold voice answered, "Then kill her before she remembers what she accidentally saved." The next morning, Isabella barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca Moretti's expressionless face and heard the whispers echoing through the ballroom. He never spares anyone. She poured herself coffee, hoping reality would finally replace the nightmare. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Good morning, Miss Romano." The deep voice instantly made her sit upright. "Luca, I'll be outside in 5 minutes." "What? You'll need breakfast." "I don't." The line went dead. She rushed to her apartment window. 2 black luxury SUVs were parked outside. 8 men in tailored suits stood beside them. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. Oh no. A knock came at her door. She opened it to find a gray-haired gentleman wearing white gloves.
Good morning, Miss Romano. Who are you? My name is Carlo. Mr. Moretti asked me to escort you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm afraid you don't have much choice. I'm being kidnapped? Carlo smiled politely. If Mr. Moretti wished to kidnap you, Miss Romano, he wouldn't have knocked. She sighed.
This is insane. So I've been told. 20 minutes later, Isabella sat across from Luca, inside a breathtaking dining room overlooking Lake Michigan. The table could have seated 30 people. Only 2 chairs were occupied. Fresh pastries, fruit, coffee, and homemade Italian dishes covered the table. Luca quietly poured coffee into her cup. You look tired. She folded her arms. You frightened me. I know. You sent a convoy to my apartment. I did. My neighbors think I'm dating a drug lord. A faint smile crossed his face. They're only half wrong. She blinked. Was that a joke? I've been told I have one every few years. Despite herself, Isabella laughed. Then she caught herself. Stop. What? Making me laugh. Why? Because I haven't forgiven you. I wasn't aware I needed forgiveness. You told me I belonged to you. I said you were under my protection. That's not normal. My life isn't normal. She leaned forward. Then explain. Luca's expression turned serious. You interrupted an assassination. The smile vanished from her face. I'm sorry. What? You spilled wine on me at precisely the second a sniper pulled his trigger. He slid a tablet across the table. Security footage played. She watched herself stumble. The wine flew. Luca shifted slightly. A fraction of a second later, the window behind him shattered. A bullet ripped through the chair he had occupied moments before. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. Oh, I should be dead. She looked up slowly. You mean, you saved my life? I didn't even know. I know. She swallowed hard. So, why am I here? Because whoever hired that sniper believes you saw something, but I didn't. They won't believe that. Before she could answer, a guard entered quickly. Boss. Luca looked over. What is it? We caught one. Alive. Barely. Luca stood. He looked toward Isabella. Stay here. I'm coming. No. I deserve answers. It's dangerous. She stood anyway. I'm tired of everyone deciding what's dangerous for me. For several seconds, Luca simply stared at her. Finally, he nodded. Fine. The underground security room felt nothing like the elegant mansion upstairs. Concrete walls, steel doors. One frightened man sat tied to a chair. His face was bruised. When he saw Luca, terror replaced anger. No, Luca spoke quietly. Who hired you? I don't know. You do. I swear. Luca stepped closer. The tattoos climbing his neck disappeared beneath his shirt, hinting at the artwork covering his chest and back. His reputation alone was enough to make hardened criminals tremble. The prisoner glanced at Isabella. So that's her. Luca noticed. His voice became ice. Don't look at her. The prisoner laughed nervously. You've gone soft. Before anyone could react, Luca grabbed the chair and slammed it against the floor. The room shook. You mistake mercy for weakness. The man immediately started talking. It was the Romano crew. Everyone froze. One of Luca's captains frowned. Impossible. They paid us. Luca narrowed his eyes. They've had peace with us for 8 years. They don't anymore. The prisoner started laughing. You have no idea what's coming. Before another question could be asked, the prisoner suddenly began choking. What happened? Isabella shouted. Foam appeared around his mouth. One of the guards checked him. Poison. Luca cursed. Cyanide capsule. Within seconds, the only witness was dead. Silence filled the room. Isabella whispered. Someone wanted to make sure he never talked. Luca looked at her. Exactly. For the first time, she understood how dangerous his world truly was. That afternoon, Luca assigned 2 female security officers to stay with Isabella. She hated it. I can buy groceries by myself. No. I can walk outside. No. I can breathe without permission. You have my permission. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. So I've heard. Days passed. The threat never disappeared. Instead, something unexpected happened. She began seeing a different side of Luca. One evening, she wandered into the mansion's enormous library. She found him sitting alone, reading an old Italian novel. You read? He looked up. I assume that's an insult. I just imagined mafia bosses polishing guns. I do that on Thursdays. She burst into laughter. You definitely have more than one joke. He closed the book. My mother loved stories. You miss her. Every day. What was she like? The kindest person I've ever known. So how did someone like her raise? She stopped herself. A criminal. She nodded cautiously. Luca looked toward the fireplace. My father was the boss. You had no choice. I had choices. His voice carried quiet regret. I simply made the wrong ones. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Isabella asked softly, Do you ever wish you could leave? Every day. So why don't you? Because monsters don't retire. She shook her head. I don't think you're a monster. You should. No. You've seen what I'm capable of. I've also seen what you're protecting. Their eyes met. Something changed between them. Not love. Not yet. Understanding. A connection neither expected. If you've made it this far, let us know in the comments. Do you think Isabella should trust Luca, or should she run while she still can? Your answer might not be as simple as it seems. Later that night, while Isabella slept peacefully for the first time in days, someone watched the mansion from the darkness beyond the gates. A man lowered a pair of binoculars. So she's still alive. Another voice crackled through his radio. The boss wants her captured before Moretti figures out the truth. What truth? The assassination wasn't about Luca. The man frowned. What do you mean? The waitress was always the real target. He went silent. How is that possible? Because her late father stole something 25 years ago. The man slowly smiled. And she doesn't even know she has it. Inside the mansion, Luca woke abruptly. Years of instinct told him something was wrong. He walked toward the security office. Every monitor suddenly went black. The emergency alarm screamed through the mansion. One of his guards shouted from the hallway. Boss! Luca reached for his pistol. What happened? The east gate has been breached. Another explosion echoed across the estate. Glass shattered. Smoke poured through the gardens. Luca's heart sank. There was only one person the attackers had come for. Find Isabella, he roared. Now, Isabella jolted awake as another explosion shook the mansion. The lights flickered before the emergency generators flooded the hallways with a dim glow. Outside, gunfire erupted from every direction. She opened her bedroom door just as one of Luca's female security officers grabbed her arm. Miss Romano, we have to move. What's happening? They've breached the estate. A burst of bullets shattered the windows at the end of the corridor. The guard pulled Isabella toward a hidden staircase. Hurry! Before they reached it, 3 masked gunmen stormed into the hallway. The lead guard fired first. Get down! The corridor became chaos. Isabella threw herself behind a marble pillar as bullets ricocheted around her. One attacker broke through the smoke and lunged toward her. Before he could reach her, another shot echoed through the hall. The man collapsed. Luca emerged from the smoke, his black shirt partially torn, revealing intricate tattoos stretching across his chest, shoulders, and neck. As he moved, more ink covered his powerful arms, disappearing beneath the sleeves. Despite the violence around him, his focus never left Isabella. He reached her in seconds. Are you hurt? She shook her head. No. He cupped her face briefly. Good. She stared at him. You came yourself. I always will. He turned to his men. Get her to the panic room. I'm not leaving you. You are. I'm tired of hiding. So am I. Another explosion interrupted them. One of Luca's captains ran toward him. They're retreating. Luca frowned. No. He looked toward the front gate. They're distracting us. His eyes widened. The tunnels. At that exact moment, alarms sounded beneath the mansion. Someone had entered through the underground passages. Luca cursed. They're already inside. Before anyone could react, smoke grenades rolled across the floor. Visibility disappeared. Hands grabbed Isabella from behind. Luca! He spun toward her voice. Isabella! But the smoke swallowed everything. By the time it cleared, she was gone. Hours later, Luca stood alone in his private office. His fists were bleeding from punching the wall. Carlo entered carefully. We've searched everywhere. Luca didn't answer. We found this. Carlo placed a phone on the desk. A video began playing. Isabella sat tied to a chair inside an abandoned warehouse. She looked frightened, but unbroken. A masked man stepped into view. You have 12 hours, Moretti. What do you want? Luca asked through the screen. Everything. The man laughed. Your territory, my money, and your surrender. Luca's eyes hardened. And if I refuse, we send her back one piece at a time. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. Finally, Luca spoke. Prepare every soldier. One captain hesitated. If we attack, this becomes war. Luca slowly looked at him. It became war the moment they touched her. Across the city, Isabella struggled against the ropes around her wrists. A woman entered carrying a glass of water. You should drink. I'm not thirsty. You will be. The woman placed the glass beside her. You don't belong in this world. I know. Then why stay with him? Isabella looked directly at her. Because everyone keeps telling me who he is. And I wanted to discover who he chooses to be. The woman looked surprised. You actually love him. Isabella hesitated. She hadn't admitted it, not even to herself. Finally, she whispered, yes. The woman sighed sadly. Then pray he arrives before my boss does. The door slammed shut. Minutes later, another man entered. Unlike the others, he removed his mask. Isabella recognized him instantly. One of Luca's trusted lieutenants. You? He smiled. Disappointed? You betrayed him. I outgrew him. He trusted you. He was becoming weak. She shook her head. No, he chose you over business. That's called humanity. It's called failure. He leaned closer. When Luca arrives, he'll die watching you. Outside the warehouse, black SUVs surrounded the building. Luca stepped out first. Rain poured from the night sky. Every member of his team waited for his order. One captain spoke quietly. There are too many of them. Luca checked his pistol. There were too many of them yesterday. And? They're still breathing. He looked toward the warehouse. No one leaves until Isabella does. The doors exploded inward. Gunfire erupted. The warehouse became a battlefield. Luca pushed forward with relentless determination. Every step brought another attacker. Every room revealed another ambush. His tattoos, visible beneath his torn shirt, were streaked with rain, dust, and blood as he fought his way deeper inside. He finally reached the central room. There she was. Isabella! She looked up. Luca! Before he reached her, the traitorous lieutenant grabbed Isabella and pressed a pistol against her head. One more step. Luca stopped. The room fell silent. You've lost, the traitor said. No, you came exactly as I expected. I came because she matters. You would have sacrificed your empire. Without hesitation, the traitor laughed. Over a waitress, Luca's voice never wavered. Over the woman I love. Tears filled Isabella's eyes. You. He smiled gently. I should have said it sooner. The traitor became furious. Enough! He tightened his grip. Choose. Her. He pointed toward the warehouse windows. Or your empire. Luca slowly lowered his weapon. I choose her. The traitor smiled. I knew. A single gunshot echoed through the room. The traitor looked down in shock. A bullet had struck his shoulder. The female guard, who had protected Isabella during the mansion attack, had taken the shot from a hidden position. The distraction lasted only a second. It was enough. Luca lunged forward. He pulled Isabella away as more shots rang out. His team subdued the remaining attackers after a fierce struggle. The traitor was captured alive to face justice within Luca's organization. When the last shot faded, the warehouse became quiet. Isabella threw her arms around Luca. I thought I'd never see you again. He held her tightly. You will never face them alone. She looked into his eyes. You really came. I promised. She smiled through tears. And I love you too. He kissed her gently. As dawn began breaking through the warehouse windows. Months later, Chicago looked different. Luca had stepped away from much of the violence that had defined his life. He invested in legitimate businesses and placed trusted people in charge of the family's legal enterprises, refusing to let betrayal rule his future. On a quiet corner of the city, a small cafe opened its doors. Romano's Cafe. The smell of fresh bread and espresso filled the air. Neighbors laughed. Children played outside. Exactly the dream Isabella had carried for years. One afternoon, the front door opened. Luca walked inside wearing a simple dark suit instead of the intimidating attire he once favored. He carried a bouquet of white roses. The customers smiled knowingly. Isabella laughed. You know everyone watches when you walk in. I only notice one person. He stopped in front of her. I spent my life believing power could protect me. She took his hands. And now? Now I know love gives me something power never could. He reached into his pocket. I have one more question. He knelt. The cafe fell silent. Isabella Romano. She laughed. That's already my name. He grinned. Then make it official in every way. He opened the ring box. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her cheeks. Yes. The entire cafe erupted into applause. Carlo wiped away a tear. I was beginning to think he'd never ask. Everyone laughed. As Luca slipped the ring onto her finger, Isabella whispered, We met because of one clumsy mistake. He shook his head. No. We met because fate refused to let either of us walk alone. They embraced while the morning sunlight filled the cafe. Sometimes life changes because of one accident, one impossible moment, or one unexpected act of courage. Isabella had spilled a bottle of wine. She never imagined it would lead her to the love of her life. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable mafia romances filled with suspense, heart, and happily ever afters. Until the next story, remember that sometimes the most unexpected encounters become the beginning of the greatest love stories of all.